You guys questions. Hailey and Sophie Bensch, two of the three nails. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to talk, we're a group of people who are gifted with different creative gifts that God has given us. And we're seeking hard after Christ. So I guess I wanted to start out by asking you guys how you got started in music. Where was your faith then? And what has that journey been like?
Well, of course, we got started at a very young age with our parents gifting us each our instruments for Christmas. But even before that, we had been very musical. My dad always played us all of his classic rock songs that were on the radio and then would quiz us and be like, who's this? Who's singing? I'm like, Dad, we don't know. So, McCartney, the Beatles. So we've always kind of been in the realm of music. But it wasn't till I was 7, she was 10, and the other one was 13, that we actually got our instruments and started playing. Of course, at that time I was 7, so I wasn't very developed in my faith. But I've always believed in God, of course, because my parents always took us to church and, just taught us about the Bible. Like, I know some parents take their kids to church, but it's not reflected in their actions. But our parents always tried to be a, godly household, even though, everyone has issues and everyone has problems. So it always was clear to me the difference between people who love the Lord and people who are lost. So as I grew in my faith, it was kind of an easy transition to being like, okay, well, we should start singing at churches more. We should, start writing more Christian music. And we haven't published any other than the one that you wrote, but I've got a lot that are, saved up in my memos.
Awesome. And so you were gifted drums, right?
Yes.
Y'all should see this girl on drums.
And she was that little. You saw her in the video.
Yeah, I was small. I was very small.
Yeah, she was smaller than that. Okay, and you were gifted
a bass guitar. So it was as long as me. I had a full size, so my arm had to reach all the way out. But yeah, so I started on the bass guitar when I was about 10. And again, at that time, my faith really was not super developed.
But she's been saved since she came out of the womb.
I don't believe that.
She's been saved since day one.
I think
she's never sinned.
From that's not true. I think they're gonna pick her, From the time that I could understand, like she said, I could understand that was what was true. And our parents didn't hide us from the other things out there. It wasn't like, this is all I know. I saw the other options too. And I thought, this is what, okay, if my house is the one full of love and safety and the other houses aren't, what's the difference? And so from a very young age, I did have my faith, but really my faith didn't start to grow strong. Really strong until freshman year of high school. I went on a mission trip to Guatemala and rededicated my life to the Lord. And then after that, I was set on I kind of got the missions bug and I wanted to do mission work ever since then. And then when I was a senior in high school, I got a mentor, and she was who really started to help me dive into my Bible and spend time in Scripture. And spending time in Scripture obviously starts to help you mature in your faith. And so it's just been like a snowball since then.
We when you got your instruments, but you didn't know how to play them.
Yeah.
You couldn't read music.
Still can't read music.
Struggle.
Yeah.
But so after you got them, you got a teacher, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, for the first few months, we had this little booklet, and he gave each one of us a booklet with a CD, our dad did, and it would have like instructions on how to start, basic stuff like rudiments on the drums and basic chords for her guitar, or I guess
scales and stuff.
Yeah, scales. And he said, you're going to learn how to do all of these in the booklet, and you're going to watch the little CD with the guy who's like 1, 2, 3, 4, So we went through the whole thing. We learned all the stuff in the book. And he was like, after you finish that, then we'll get you a teacher. So we learned how to do the basic stuff, basic beats and chords and things like that.
And then when we did get a teacher, it was one teacher for all of us and
One teacher
vocals.
for the three of us.
And shout out to him because he was amazing.
Yes.
And he killed
Kenneth
it.
Beck.
So you guys had a public faith from a young age, and you still have a public faith. So what sort of challenges might there be in the natural, like, growing up process, when you are making music and people are listening to you and they're also know you as a person of faith? Is there a challenge ever to be an artist who is of faith and also a regular, normal person?
Well, I feel like in most artsy communities that aren't based on Christianity, it's a lot more worldly. Like, they think of the artsy and creative people as like, well, the potheads who smoke weed, and then that's how they get all their ideas. So when you like try to approach those groups, sometimes they're very judgmental because they know that you don't participate in any of that, and that you're not going to just act like it's healthy and it's okay. So it does kind of make you a little bit alienated, but there's still ways around that and ways to show them I'm not, what everyone thinks, like, oh, Christians are judgmental and Christians are hateful and all this stuff towards things that they disagree with. There are ways around it. You just kind of have to get your foot in the door first.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, when it comes to growing up as that type of person, I never really was surrounded with Christian friends, just because there weren't many around me. And that could have been a big stumbling block. And I see that happen for lots of people. But like I said, our parents didn't shield us from those things. And if anything, they encouraged us to make friends and have friends and just be bold in what you believe. And most of my core people knew that we disagreed on a lot of things, but it was never an issue. And even now, we go to college with a couple people who I was friends with in high school, and we've ended up on completely different sides of the spectrum, and we can still see each other and spend time together, and it would be no issue at all.
There was one rally at my school with people debating a political issue that I'm very firmly, I'm very firm in my beliefs. And I was on one side, and one of our friends was on the other side. And I went over to the other side. I was like, hey, how have you been? Like screaming across, each side to each other. And she's like, okay, I love your outfit. And I'm like, thanks so much. Anyway, time to go back to the other side.
So there's ways to be civil. There's ways.
Loves our music. She's one of our biggest supporters.
We went to a concert with her 2 years back. Yeah. It's just,
it doesn't have to be an issue unless you let it be an issue.
There's no reason to let your differing opinions make you hateful.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the fact that there were 3 sisters, and Elodie's not here, so I'm sorry we can't talk too much about Elodie because she's not here. But there's 3 sisters. She was the oldest when you guys got started. What were the blessings and the challenges of doing something like this and create this big creative endeavor as sisters?
I can confidently say it was definitely a blessing and a curse, because as sisters growing up with each other, we're able to read our cues, our silent cues so well. Yeah. So it's like, she wants us to speed up, she just shoots us a little look. She wants us to slow down, she just shoots us a little look, And her being so much older, she was 13 when I was 7. She, of course, was like the leader of the band, and she was able to kind of get us all in line. But that also means that we had a lot of arguments, and there was a lot of screaming and me throwing drumsticks and stuff. Yeah. It was a nightmare because I was a very violent kid, you guys. I was vicious.
That's why she was the drummer.
That's why she was seriously, my dad always called me Animal, like from the Muppets. And when I was in dance, I hated it so much that I kept on biting my instructor on her ankles until they kicked me out. So if that just gives y'all any idea of how being in a band with flashing sisters, and all of us were strong-willed. Yes. Sophie was a lot more silent. She was a peacemaker, always. Yes. She was always like, let's just try again, you guys. You don't have to yell. And then Elodie and I were just going for each other's throats. But
at the same time, there were a lot a lot of blessings.
Yeah.
I would say
I don't think I could have been in a band with anyone else at
Yes.
7 years old that would have
And
not left.
we all have, it grew us so much as people because of the bad and because of the good.
Yeah.
And the experience we got gigging and going out and doing that type of stuff was just unmatched. I mean, that was amazing.
Yeah.
The kind of memories we made together and just the way we got to be involved with our family. We were never busy doing video games or doing something
Yeah.
that we were never stuck in our room alone and isolated. We were together.
Well, we were still stuck in a room alone and isolated, but we were all together.
Yes.
And like our dad wouldn't let us leave. until we
What sort of
practiced.
gigs did you do?
We played at restaurants, played at churches. We played at Florence Comic-Con a few
Mhm.
times.
So there was a lot of things that my dad did that put us out of our comfort zones,
Yeah.
which was good because it allowed us to be comfortable, you know, to expand what we are comfortable with and get used to judgy looks and not think twice. But it was also a little bit bad because it did spark a lot of anxiety. And you can see that reflected in like,
In performance.
yeah, in performance. And Elodie, I know, really struggles with that because there's just a lot of things that they wanted her to do that she wasn't fully comfortable with doing. You know, they would always want her to speak and be like, hey, we're the band and this, that, and the other thing. She was like, I'm already getting up there and singing. Why do I have to talk too?
Yeah.
But anyway, it also helped us a lot, which directly or not directly, we're all very good public speakers now,
Yeah.
especially Elodie. Like she gets up there with her science presentation and she just goes.
It's so
And she always gets the best grades and has the best presentations. And I think that it's partly because we were, you know, public from a very young age. So.
Well, let's talk about your dad a lot. Your mom is an amazing artist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Her mom, April Bensch, is she makes a living as
Crazy.
an artist. She paints murals in schools and furniture and anything and everything. She paints daily, and that is how she makes her living.
Yeah.
And so you've been raised not only musically but also around art.
Mhm.
In fact, they have a wine and design thing where there's a lot of art going on in your family. So what did maybe say mom's work ethic bring to your team?
Well, she never stops. She's working all the time, every day. And then when she sits down at night to watch something with my dad, she's still on her phone responding to emails.
Yeah.
You know, she's just all the time, busy, busy, busy. She never stops. So it was kind of helpful to see, like, not, you know, in your free time, just sitting around and doing nothing. Like, we were trying to do something productive that would be.
Yeah, always trying to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
That she definitely instilled that in us. Like, I can't just sit around and not be gaining something. I don't know. Like, I will always pick up something new. Haley pretty much made her whole outfit here.
Yeah.
She
I
sewed the
make-
whole thing.
I make jewelry, I make the skirt and this, and just,
So,
you know.
in a lot of ways, it was very helpful. And we became the hardworking people we are now because of
Yeah.
her and because of my dad. Absolutely. In a lot of ways, we had to unlearn some of that stuff. And I haven't talked to them a bunch about this, but me specifically, one of the biggest things I've had to fight against is just being very self-critical. And the first summer I ever went to Africa was a couple of years ago. And it's a totally different culture when you leave the country. And they're not workaholics like they are here. Everything in America is just so fast paced.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that till I left and saw something different. And it kind of started to heal some of those things for me because I came home and I thought, okay, I can feel productive in Africa just working in the kitchen with the ladies there. And I feel like my time has a purpose. Then why doesn't that have a purpose when I'm back home? So those things I started, being able to unlearn a little bit, but I still have the creativity that I got from it and all those things.
Yeah. And I think it's much better to have that drive instilled in you from a young age and kind of then learn how to relax instead of not having any drive. You know, your parents always telling you have to do your homework. Like,
Yeah.
they never had to tell us. Maybe once in my whole life, my parents had to remind me to do my homework. But other than that, I was like, it's just, we have that instilled in us.
Well, so let's talk about nature versus nurture. How, would you be as creative as you've not grown up in this environment? Or do you think that those gifts that you've been given genetically, I mean, my grandmother, their great grandmother was an opera singer. Like they literally stuff passes down. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it comes down to, yes, we had those gifts, but how are you supposed to know if you never have an avenue to explore them? And so maybe I had this voice from a young age, but my voice didn't sound like this when I was young. I had to grow into it. And if I hadn't been developing it up until this point, there were hours of me in that band room crying over that I couldn't get the notes. I couldn't harmonize correctly. I couldn't do it. And I just felt like I didn't have what I needed. And now it's so natural for me. And I know that I have the gift, but it had to be worked on.
Yeah.
And we had parents that were encouraging that, and we had the opportunity to do that.
Of course, it's a God-given gift, but it's also a skill.
Yeah.
And people tell me all the time, "Oh, you sing so well. I could never sing." And I say, I wasn't born out of the womb learning how to sing. You know, my parents put me in chorus and they gave me a little teacher, and I learned myself, and I've always wanted to. So it's kind of just like learning to do sports, where you train that muscle and you learn how to, you know, make it the way that you want it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with art. I grew up seeing her and Elodie, you know, painting and drawing and doing all this stuff. And I was always upset that I never had my own style. I could like kind of copy images, but I never really felt like I had artistic freedom. And it was just years of just trying different things and finding what made my art, you know, speak out the most. So I feel like a lot of it comes from, you know, the parents encouraging it, but there's also, you know, something inside of each of us that tells us, you know, what you kind of want to do. I never had a very strong initiative to be in very active fields and sports and stuff like that, but I always wanted to be hands-on with art and plants and all of these different things. So I think it's definitely a bit of both.
So you're both at Coastal Carolina University, and you are a freshman studying
biology,
and you are a senior.
I'm about to graduate. I'm majoring in psychology and sociology.
I think you just won like an award last year for your
psychology student of the year. Sociology student of the year.
I don't know what that means. Honestly, I don't, but I went to an award ceremony for it.
Yeah.
So, and then your sister is in microbiology getting her PhD. Very, very smart girls. Where does music what role does music play in your lives? Have you ever decided to set it down or pick it back up? Or what is your relationship with music?
I think there have definitely been times in my life where I set it down, and not to say that I'm happy that happened. I mean, there can be times for that, but I think there were a lot of times where I did set it down because, like she was talking about before, it can be easy to associate anxiety and performance and just a lot of criticism with music. And so after we come out of all of that and we kind of stopped playing together because Ellie went to school, it was very easy for me to just put it away and not have to worry about it, because it did give me a lot of anxiety because I'd start playing, and if I wasn't as good as I wanted to be, I would just put it down. I'd get so upset. And so that is something I wish I had more guidance on, because I didn't really have any musical people in my life who could guide me in that way and encourage me to keep going. So I do think I was set back a lot by that. But now in my life, I mean, I still absolutely use it as an outlet all the time. I write music all the time. Even if I'm not publishing music, it's not all about, I never had the drive to get famous. I never wanted my music to get out there. So even me creating in my own room, especially if I'm writing worship music and things like that, I mean, I'm worshiping, like you guys said, the audience of one, I'm worshiping for the Lord, and I'm singing a song of joy to him, you know, and it's not always about who's going to hear it.
Yeah.
And so it absolutely still has a place in my life, and I'm able to encourage younger musical girls in my life, which has been great. And I mean, we still perform. We're going to sing at church tomorrow.
Yeah, we're singing at church tomorrow with the whole family, supposedly.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Not here.
No. Yeah, not here. Sorry, guys.
So y'all go to what church is it?
First Baptist Church in Georgetown. We recently got a new pastor, so there's been a lot of commotion.
Yeah.
But it's been working out, and he seems like a good fit. and
He's very young. He's in his 30s,
so
which has
young.
been very
Whoa.
exciting for the town. He's the youngest pastor in town right now.
Yeah, I think he's the youngest pastor I've ever even heard of.
Yeah.
Sophie, you mentioned that you went to Guatemala and then I know you went to Kenya or Uganda.
Both, yes.
2 years ago, went to Uganda, and the last year went to Kenya and Uganda.
Uganda, yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can't play this thing that you sent me. So tell me, while I'm looking for this, tell me about when you went to Africa or when you guys have done missions work, how have you used your creativity there?
Yeah. Well, actually, my first summer going, I expected to be the quote unquote worship leader of the team. And I brought a guitar, and that was the whole idea. I mean, I talked to the people leading the team, and they were like, you can lead worship every day. The Africans, they love music. Well, my guitar got lost. I never had a guitar in Africa.
Never got it the whole 2 months.
And so, again, I think this is part of what really helped me form my identity apart from music, because my whole identity had been formed around my talents, which is a good thing. The Lord blessed me with that, but it is not my identity. And so being on mission without the guitar, like I thought I would have, I had to say, I literally had friends who would encourage me and say, those people met you without your music and they loved you. They didn't meet you as a musician. That's not your value. So I didn't have my guitar, but I did get a lot of time just to worship with people, and I was able to sing at church all the time.
And still, she did a mural there.
Oh yeah, both years I did a huge mural at the school.
Yeah.
So that was my art coming into play.
That's the song that she wrote with students.
Yeah.
Wow, in Uganda, right?
Yeah, they're singing some English and some Swahili, but they're
So
just praising the Lord.
in case
pretty
you
much.
were wondering why
Yeah.
you couldn't understand.
But yeah. And I even heard them practicing that sometimes from my room when I was going to sleep or waking up. Because I lived like right next to the school, and I would hear them practicing it. And then this year I came back and they were like, we made some upgrades. And they showed me that they changed the song a little bit. They sped it up. They changed the chords to make it happier.
Yeah,
So like
it
they
was
worked on
very-
it for a year.
So I'm waiting for that to show up in one of your new tracks, one of your new songs.
Yeah, that would be great. I kind of forgot that existed. if I'm being
Okay,
honest.
okay, it needs to. A lot of people here, like a lot of what you said, especially about having a gift, having to develop it, and then it's so easy to set it down because the discouragements are great.
Yeah.
You guys have actually created albums. You've gone in, taken the time, spent the money, and had your work produced. And I know that that's a big effort. What sort of expectations and disappointments have you had in putting out your work? Like some of us who might have put out books or might have whatever, there's always disappointments and there's always expectations you realize you had that you have to let go.
Well, we never really expected for our music to get big. That wasn't really our goal in producing it.
We never even attached our bank information so they could send us the money. We
Yeah.
were like, what are we
We'll
gonna
get
pennies?
like $5. Yeah. Anyway,
And I'm proud of what we made. But when I decide to show someone the deepest part of my soul that I've put into this music, and I'm serious,
and
like
they're like talking
the
over
most
it,
hurt
like,
that I've experienced, and I put it into music, and then I show people, and they're like, wow. And then 2 seconds later, they start talking. I'm like, should I just stop it? Do you want
Yeah,
to see or not?
seriously.
It's like,
Seriously, you haven't even gotten to the second chorus.
so
Like, come on.
that's maybe the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Yeah.
we've been all right.
What advice do you have for the creatives, the creative Christ followers in this room?
You don't have to be constantly trying to produce something. It's okay to let it rest for a little bit. Like, you don't have to beat yourself up if you have, art block or something like that. But it's always important that you keep trying at it, after you've had a little break. You don't just, put it in the back of the closet and just never think about it again. Like, oh, I didn't like how that piece came out, so I'm going to take a long break. You just kind of have to try different things. I'm very involved in all different sorts of art. I do wood burning and sewing and, watercolor and drawing and all these different things, jewelry making. So if one specific thing isn't working out perfectly for you, it doesn't mean you have to swear off
creative.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, artistic expression.
Creating.
Oh,
When
yeah,
you disagree.
yeah. I feel like there's so much, especially after the election, where people were just posting all of this stuff. You know, people who were in favor of it, you know, boasting, and people who were against it being like really hateful and saying these terrible, terrible things for people who were supportive of it. And I'm friends with, you know, both sides of it. Most of my close friends who aren't Christian have a lot of differing opinions than me. So it's just really important to remember people are going to have the opinions that they have. And even if you disagree with them, you can't let it end a relationship. You have to be loving. You can't become defensive over what you agree with.
I mean, like that, was it a poem earlier that you said about the fact that Jesus isn't walking the earth right now? We are his hands and feet.
We are.
And I've heard people talk about that before, and it's so true. And when you think your unsaved friends are seeing Jesus through you and only you need to be a reflection of Jesus.
Yeah.
This is your job on earth.
And what sort of role do you think that our younger generations, we've got some younger generation here, what sort of role do you think that they have in making an impact for Christ through the creative arts?
I mean, just as much as any other generation ever has.
Yeah.
People have to keep creating, and there's a voice for young people to speak to other young people, and that's who you're going to reach is your own people group. So it's just as important for young people to be creating as it is for us to be creating. Well, we're young, but I mean, I was writing worship music when I was in high school and just asking if I could share it at youth group, and that was a way for me to bless the Lord and reach other people.